Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So basically, our topic is inflation. Inflation basically, we say that when the prices are rise and rise, generally it's known as inflation. In other words, when too much money chase few goods, it's known as inflation. So here the definition of inflation: general rise in prices and fall in purchasing value of money. It's called inflation. When the prices rise and the real purchasing power or real income is not rise, it's mean our purchasing power will be decrease, which results in inflation. So prices will be rise and real income is decrease. So inflation caused by higher prices or increase in demand. Basically there are two causes of inflation, two types of causes. Basically inflation, which are higher prices. Here the prices is talk about the input prices, which means cost push factors, and the increase in consumer demand. Basically when the inflation is comes out due to the increasing demand, it's demand pull inflation. Yeah, demand pull factors. So firstly we study about cost push factors. Cost push factors are known as the factors or those factors which caused by inflation, caused to inflation by rising cost of inputs to production. Basically in which include four production factors. Basically there are four production factors: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So basically when their prices are increased, which it leads to increase in cost. Production cost when increase, it leads to inflation or rise in prices, which comes out in inflation. So basically first factor is rise in wage. When the wages are rise, it leads to increase in prices, because when wages increase, the production cost will be increase. Production cost will when the production cost increase, it turns to shift overall supply curve. When the supply curve increase to from upward, it leads to increase in prices from P to P1, and the curve shift from AS aggregate supply curve when shift from uh, AS to AS1. So here the quantity will be decreased, quantity supply will be decreased. In first price our quantity will be Q, and when the wages increase or prices increase, the production cost increase, it comes out decrease in quantity. So the quantity of supply, here the national out here the quantity represent national output. So national output will be decreased Q to Q1, but the prices will be increased. Next is rise in raw material. When the raw material prices increase, it leads to decrease the purchasing power of supplier or producer. When his producer purchasing power decrease, so increasing raw material cost results in decreasing uh, it results in decreasing purchasing power of producer or supplier. When the producer or supplier purchasing power decrease, it means uh, the cost of raw material is out of his budget. So his supply quantity will be decreased. Next is rise in indirect tax. When the indirect tax increase, government it's basically indirect taxes are the general sales tax or all the other tax which are imposed on someone else and paid by some other. So basically when indirect taxes increase, it leads to increase in prices, because when taxes increase, producer increase the supply and consumer have to pay more than previous price. So it also leads to increase decrease in quantity, because when the prices increase, quantity demanded will also decrease. It shift from Q to Q1. So all these are the factors, cost push factors, which leads to inflation. Now we study about demand pull factors, which leads to increase in inflation by increasing demand. So basically, demand pull inflations, yeah, demand pull factors are inflation caused by excessive growth in aggregate demand than supply. When the supply is short, and the supply demand is more than supply, it leads to shortage, and it results out in inflation. So here the factors, demand pull factors are high spending. When the consumer is more applicable and more spent on exports or other things, so it leads to increase in prices, because this in short run would the producer is not able to supply more quantity, so there a result in increase in price. So price will be increased from P to P1, and the quantity will be decreased from Q to Q1. So basically, when the consumer spend more, it leads to more demand, but the supplier is unable to supply more in short run, because in short run we can't able to adjust or build new plants. So the prices will be increased. Next is money supply. When the money supply of in the economy is increased, it leads to increase in demand, because when people have more money in their hands, they demand more commodities and more services, which means the supplier will not be able to supply them at, so demand will be more than supply, which leads to increase in prices, because when money supply increases, it means interest rate is low. When interest rate is low, people will buy more things and more investment. So far this monetarist economist जो है वो increase the interest rate and decrease money supply, because when for to decrease money supply, increase interest rate. Next is bottleneck shortage. Bottleneck shortage is when the all the resources are fully utilized and fully job employment, then the then also if the demand increase, the supply will be not increased, so it results in increase in prices and decrease in quantity. So these are the factors, demand pull factor, which leads to increase in inflation.